Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am the Darklight Emissary, and this video is going to be a bit of news on the Henry Cavill Warhammer universe, cinematic universe buyout by Amazon. So this video is going to just be my thoughts on this, whether I'm for or against it, in between all that. I apologize if I ramble a little bit. I'm just going to speak my mind on this, and hopefully you gain a bit of either insight or not on this, but it's a relevant topic for us right now in the Warhammer 40k community, and I thought I would give my thoughts on it. I've been thinking on it for the last few days, and I didn't want to just put something out immediately because I've been thinking about it quite a bit, and wanted to kind of collect my thoughts a bit before putting something like this out. But anyways, without further ado, I'll get right into it here. Basically, I'm cautiously optimistic for this. I think that there is some potential for this to work out, and Amazon is kind of hit and miss right now. I feel like overall a show like The Boys gives me some hope for the Warhammer universe in not compromising on its violence and overall dark, grim future atmosphere. The Boys definitely doesn't step away from that, and Amazon has let their creators kind of go hog wild with that if you've watched any of those episodes of that show. And while shows like The Rings of Power and The Wheel of Time have been pretty big misses for anyone who's at all familiar with the source material, some of the production values of some of the sets in those and a few of the special effects are definitely showing off some of that money that Amazon has that will definitely benefit a Warhammer universe. And Henry Cavill, seems like a genuine enough guy. He definitely seems to love the Warhammer universe. So I don't really have any concerns about him. He seems to have left a show like The Witcher, for example, because they were not doing it justice, and he didn't want to be part of any impending garbage fire. And, then he went to go try to do Superman again with Warner Brothers, and they apparently don't want him there. And so now he's working with Warhammer, working with Games Workshop and Amazon to put together a cinematic universe. I feel like one of the best ways that this universe can work is for Henry to be given a lot of authority over confirmation of what is Warhammer enough and not. And they need to have enough people from Games Workshop keeping the integrity solid here. It's apparent that a show like Rings of Power didn't have anyone on board to keep the integrity of the overall Tolkien lore under wraps there. That show felt, to me at least, like a very elaborate fan fiction for the second age of Lord of the Rings. Now, with Warhammer, I believe that Games Workshop is going to keep a very close eye, and probably in their agreement with Amazon, they keep a lot of creative control over their projects that are going to be made. And one thing I can say about the games that have come out for Warhammer is it typically means that, at least as far as the games go, that most of the games have the proper aesthetic for Warhammer, even if the games themselves aren't that great. The games all look like Warhammer, and I think that's because Games Workshop at least does a pass that it looks like the right thing before letting it get released. They don't let developers for the games get out of hand with weird off-brand looking stuff or anything like that. So I do think that there is some good potential to have Amazon do it. I would have liked to see it go to the Games of Thrones people. That production crew, that whole team is so good at creating a world, creating the right costumes, the right feel, the right sets. Regardless of what you think about the later seasons of Game of Thrones, the production value all the way through was always super good. I was never taken out of those worlds, that world of Game of Thrones, for any of the episodes I really watched. It all felt like a completely different place. I can't say the same thing for a lot of other franchises lately, and a lot of other franchises have been eviscerated. So I'm so grateful that Paramount Plus did not pick this up, because after what they did to the Halo franchise, I would have called this dead on the water, dead on arrival, had it gone to them. Likewise, I'm glad it didn't go to Netflix, because Netflix is notorious for killing everything that they touch after 1 or 2 seasons of anything. So I'm glad it's not Netflix that got it. And Amazon would have been the second choice over HBO and Game of Thrones, with that being my first choice if I would have been able to pick myself. And I do think that Henry Cavill is a good choice for helping to helm a universe there. Everything about him seems like he is just as much of a Warhammer enthusiast like anyone else that gets into it. More so than, me in some cases. Like, I've never really been a big tabletop fan of Warhammer, but I've loved a lot of the games, like Dawn of War. I love the books. That's my main source of joy for Warhammer, is the books and the overall just lore, the deepness of this lore that we have. At its surface, there's just a lot of the, the shooting each other and yelling, the silly lines that Space Marines yell at each other, heretic and purge the unclean and blah, blah, blah. But there is some deeper storytelling that's told. And while Warhammer on its face is very satirical, there's some cool, more serious stories being told, especially in the Horus Heresy era and some of the newer Warhammer 40k books. I feel like there's a lot of really good storytelling being done. And even in the older times, like some of the classics like Eisenhorn and the Gaunt's Ghosts, a lot of Dan Abnett mostly's work. It would be very cool to see that all brought to be seen on, a screen in a proper, accurate way. There's a lot of speculation right now that Henry Cavill will play Eisenhorn. There's already that Eisenhorn TV series being made by the, what was it called? The Man in the High Castle team. And, Man in the High Castle was was all right. I didn't hate it. Its costume and set direction was pretty good. So I could see them doing fine with a Warhammer show. I don't know if that's going to be folded into this or not. That was mentioned years ago, and there's been nothing else really for it, so it might be folded into this new cinematic universe we're going to get with Henry Cavill. But we will see what happens, I guess. We're not going to see anything for years still, so I know a lot of us are excited about it. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic more than excited, but I'm part of a couple of social groups. The Warhammer 40k lore subreddit has been discussing this heavily. A couple of Facebook groups have had just endless memes about Henry Cavill and him, joining up to make this, and a lot of people are very excited about this. And to those of you that are excited, I would just usher some caution, just so you're not super disappointed if we do get a gutted version of this universe, if Jeff Bezos and company somehow override Henry Cavill's objections and just inject whatever nonsense they want into the universe, and we get some weird cash grab version, Amazon basically wearing the cut-off face of Warhammer. I definitely don't want that to happen. That's what happened to the Halo show, especially. It's the cut-off face of Halo being worn by Paramount Plus and its writers, It was a facsimile of what could have been, And, there was many people smugly proclaiming that the Halo TV show was not meant for the fans of the games. Then what was it for? Just a shameless cash grab? I don't know what it was for, and I'm really hoping the same thing doesn't happen with Warhammer. Amazon, people are, in Amazon's defense, people are talking about The Boys and Invincible the most. Those are the two main shows that have done the best and gotten the most praise. And it's because they're allowed to tell their stories in the most gruesome possible way. You know, no one is censoring what they want to tell as a story. And especially with the boys, that's been done to a very satirical, violent level. Like, if you've watched The Boys, you know it's kind of a comedic level of violence. Warhammer often has a comedic level of violence as well, especially when it comes to groups like the Orcs or even the Dark Eldar and how they torture. It's so over the top, you can't help but kind of laugh at how ridiculously horrible the Dark Eldar are to anyone. So, I do think that there is, as long as they get the right people, which is the case with anything, as long as they get the right people to help run this stuff and make sure that it lines up with what we as fans expect, I think it'll do well. There is going to be some kind of compromises done so that a general audience is brought into this. They don't want to just bring in Warhammer fans with this to make it viable monetarily, I think, to make a revenue. They're going to do something pretty palatable at first to get people into it, because since Warhammer doesn't really have good guys, some people just cannot comprehend the possibility of a show having no good guys in it. And I think that they're going to soften some of the elements somehow. I don't know what they're going to do. It's too early to tell. That's the thing. But I do think that we might see something pretty good out of this. But I don't want to keep rambling on and on about this. I'm starting to talk in circles, I think. Ultimately, right now, my thoughts are, let's watch and see. Let's get more details over the next couple years on what we're getting. Once we get a trailer out of what we're getting, it'll be cool to talk about that when we see it. I do think Henry Cavill is a good choice for bringing on board. And, you know, he's the biggest name we know of keeping on board. And I know a couple of Games Workshop people have already been attached to these projects as well, so that's good. Games Workshop is not hands off with this and just letting Amazon run with it, which is good. They need to be watching this and holding on to control as much as possible, while, you know, using that Amazon money to make the best productions possible, so that this looks like the Warhammer universe. It doesn't look like a soundstage. The worst thing that could happen to this is if it got the Obi-Wan Kenobi treatment. You know, that the Star Wars show Andor was amazing. It felt like I was in a different world. I was never taken out of it. But the Obi-Wan Kenobi show felt like I was watching actors on a soundstage at times. It felt very fake. And that would be the worst thing to happen to a Warhammer show, is if it felt like the actors were on a soundstage, just reading their lines, going through the motions, or no motion at all in that case. I still remember a scene in the Obi-Wan show. I was watching in the background. You know, usually in scenes with extras, you see characters moving in the background, kind of making a scene come alive. Not in this background. There was a stormtrooper standing and staring off into space, almost T-posing. I'm pretty sure they were CGI, and it looked fake and it looked weird. And they do that for this show, these Warhammer shows. It's not going to be great. It's probably going to be live action, is my thought. And if it is a live action show to start off with, you know, like, I don't know how, like, the production of the costumes and things like that for Warhammer are going to be pretty extravagant. And I just don't know how well that'll be pulled off. I feel like Warhammer would do great as a series in the style of, like, you know, the new Cyberpunk animated series, or another long-form animated type series like Arcane was for League of Legends. If they could do something like that for Warhammer, that would be better than live action, I think. I think live action Warhammer, I think it could work in a perfect environment with the perfect people, perfect casting, perfect CGI. I just don't know if we can get all those balls spinning at the same time and balanced, you know, all those plates and balls and spinning, you know, and without them coming and crashing down, you know. Don't know. That's where I'm a little bit concerned on. And I feel like some of those animated shows that have come out recently that have been such great hits and have told such great stories have been because those mediums allow for more creativity and portraying those universes better than any real set could. And, you know, but ultimately we will see. And I hope that we will be celebrating it together in a few years' time. I want it to succeed. I want it to be great. I want to see this universe like I've seen it in my head for the last 15 to 17 years. That might be too tall of an order, though. That's the other concern for someone deep into the lore like I am, is that I've built it up to such a degree that I understand, that I don't know if another, person's portrayal of it will ever do it quite justice for me. Like, Dawn of War did it for me the most. Dark Tide has been pretty cool to see, but there's still some elements that are different from how I've always seen it in my head. And that's just me. That's a me problem. And I'd readily admit that if we get to this and the shows are great, I'm not going to shoot them down if it's not exactly how I see it in my head. As long as the show's story and the show's production values don't take me out of it, I am there for it. And so those are just a few of my thoughts on this, kind of off the cuff here. Ultimately, I am hoping for the best. I'm not expecting the worst, but I am couching my expectations in some cautiousness. I hate to build up my, my expectations too high and then have them cut out from under me. I've done that a few times in my life, and I try my best not to do that these days, and I would recommend the same level of caution from you right now. It's fun news, and I think that there's some great potential, and we will have to wait and see. So that's really it. That's all I've got. If you have any thoughts on this, you can leave a comment and we can discuss it afterwards. Please leave a like if you like this video, and please subscribe if you haven't yet, and check out a few of my other videos. I do a ton of lore commentary and retrospections on Primarchs and things, and I'm always putting out more lore-based videos. So as always, please leave your bring your light into the dark places, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you, and have a great day or night wherever you are.